Royal Commission, banks helping elder abuse. Older Australians pressured into putting up their own home as security for a younger relative's business venture have been targeted by banks who go straight for their assets rather than the borrowers when things go south. According to the man tasked with reviewing the Code of Banking Practice for the Australian Banking Association, many guarantors were offering up their assets without understanding the risks. At the extreme end, this could be the product of elder abuse, familial abuse. Philip Cowrie from governance and accountability firm Cameron Ralph Cowrie told the Banking Royal Commission on Monday. In fact, even the guidelines the banks have put together for this alert bank staff to the possibility of coercion in obtaining guarantees for someone else's loan, so this was clearly an issue. Even without crossing over the line into abuse, it was very clear people were wanting to help family members or associates and getting themselves into a highly risky position they were not clear about. Mr. Cowrie's review made 99 recommendations, 96 of which were accepted in some form by the ABA in its updated code submitted to the corporate regulator for approval in December. Under the changes, banks will be required to provide small businesses with a minimum 30 days notice to change conditions of loans, and 3 months notice before terminating a loan facility. Contracts must also be easy to understand and written in plain English. The new draft code goes a fair way towards strengthening protections for guarantors, Mr. Cowrie said on the first day of the third round of hearings, which will focus on banks' lending practices towards small and medium-sized businesses. They include a 3-day cooling-off period, better information prior to signing up, commitment to providing information to them of any underperformance of the loan during its life, and providing them with assurance that should the loan be called in, that the banks would begin with the borrower's assets rather than going straight to the guarantor's assets. One of Mr. Cowrie's recommendations, that guarantors should be absolved of liability if the bank was found not to have followed the process to the letter, was opposed by the banks as unfair and did not make it into the updated code. Mr. Cowrie said the argument was there needed to be a very serious consequence for the banks in order for them to adhere to the guarantor provisions religiously, but the banks feared the system could be gamed. He said his review heard from many small businesses who were horrified at discovering the extent to which banks could unilaterally vary contract terms such as raising interest rates or even calling in the loan altogether as a result of a breach of a non-monetary clause, even when a borrower continues to make their repayments. We made a recommendation consistent with the Small Business Ombudsman, that other than illegality, there should be no grounds for defaulting a loan provided the borrower is continuing to meet their repayments, Mr. Cowrie said. He described the language in the relevant section of the ABA's new draft code as weasel words. It's a classic example of the way in which the language and framing of the code is small business unfriendly, he said. The array of provisions there on my reading of it, it looks as if there's enormous discretion for the bank to use one or another of those circumstances to justify taking default action. Earlier in the day, senior counsel assisting Michael Hodge, QC, outlined a number of submissions from the major banks relating to small business financing. He revealed that CommBank had refunded $2.7 million to small business customers for double-dipping on overdraft fees, but failed to report the incident to the Australian Securities and Investments Commission as a significant breach. ASIC has also been notified of CommBank and Bankwest small business customers being charged fees for merchant terminals despite not using or having stopped using them. The third round of hearings kicked off today and runs for 2 weeks until June 1. The Commission held its first round of public hearings from March 13 to 23. With consumer lending practices under the spotlight. The second round focusing on dodgy financial advice ran from April 16 to 27. From bank staff accepting bribes in cash-stuffed envelopes and retirees losing their homes due to poor advice, to dead people being charged for services and planners impersonating their own clients, each round of hearings has thrown up shocking new revelations almost by the day. Last month, the drama hit a fever pitch when one witness collapsed on the stand and had to be removed on a stretcher. Dover Financial Services owner Terry McMaster had been giving evidence for more than 2 hours when he turned white as a sheet and began to breathe heavily. The latest hearings come amid revelations staff at Combank fraudulently deposited their own money into children's inactive Dollarmite accounts without the parents' consent in order to accrue bonuses and meet targets. Meanwhile, former Combank staffers have described the bank's ruthless tactics and toxic workplace environment, telling 60 Minutes on Sunday they were under intense pressure to sell products to customers even if they suspected they couldn't afford them. The Royal Commission has now received 5,540 submissions, 64% relating to the banking industry, 10% to financial advice and 10% to superannuation.